The fuck was I gonna talk about? Hello gamers and welcome to a video jumping right off of my last video where I talked about how bad I felt about modern gaming and how much I wanted to dive back into retro gaming. So I felt like today I had to make a video not only to talk about retro gaming but talk about what it actually feels to play it nowadays and to be in the community of retro gaming. Because it might be very different from when I started, which was back in the PS2 era, but nowadays collecting and just playing retro games is a completely different thing than it was back in the day. One of the things that I consider most appealing about retro gaming in the Big 26 is that most of the elitism that was surrounding this type of gaming is completely gone nowadays. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some pockets of the internet where you will find people praising scalers and playing on original hardware, and that's something that you should not discard, but the truth is that things like this, a copy of Forza Horizon for 3 euros, is something that you can just easily find nowadays because price gouging and scalpers and trendy larpers on TikTok and other platforms make it so it's not easy to you to get things like this or things like this, which is one of my favorite copies because it has like a holographic background and it's Kojima. Have I played this? No, not yet. Don't ask me. But what I really want to get to is that nowadays retro games are more accessible than ever, no matter how you want to put it. If you want a more customizable experience, you always have things like emulators. You can go ahead and download basically any emulator from any old console that you like. Now, however you are going to get the ROMs, that's up to you to decide how you want to do it, but there are ways to do it and play whatever old games you feel like playing as long as you have a PC that's not even that strong depending on what consoles you are looking to run. Beyond that, you have modern ports of games that are being put on modern platforms by companies that focus solely on remasters, like Aspire, like Snag, like Night Dive Software, that port a lot of games that make them easily playable and even more enjoyable compared to their older ways of playing in modern platforms such as Steam. One example I can give you is Doom 64, an FPS that must have been atrocious to play on platforms like the Nintendo 64, where the controller doesn't have a proper layout for you to move around and shoot as you do on a PC, but the PC port feels completely amazing to play because it's modernized and it's exactly how it should be. And then you have other things like the NSO service, which a lot of people like to discard because it's Nintendo and everything is very expensive, but contrasting with the prices that Nintendo likes to practice nowadays, the fact of the matter is that NSO is really cheap. You pay around 40 euros and you get a huge library of games from GBA to SNES to GameCube to Mega Drive. You get a bunch of consoles, and of course you could be more afraid to pay for this service considering it's only a subscription thing you're going to get and you're not actually getting the games for a permanent download. But that's just the result of how the industry is moving nowadays and how things are given to us as a consumer in 2026. And to double down on my point, I want to show you things like the RetroTink, which is one of the most known and recommended scalers for the retro community, where people say that you should buy this if you want to play an old console on a modern TV and get the best quality possible. And it's not feasible for me or anyone to tell you that this is the way you should play a PS2 or original Xbox, because things costing up to 300, 500 or even 800 here with the RetroTink 4K Pro are not feasible for me to recommend to someone who just wants to try out old games and has never gotten into the hobby itself. And by the price you are getting something like a scaler, you can get more than half of what you see here on screen. The fact of the matter is that it's not worth it to get a scaler nowadays if you're playing on modern monitors or if you don't have a complicated setup that you want to do something like record or review a product. Now, if you are rich and you really want to play on original hardware and go through the expense of not only the games but the entire setup that a scaler takes, you can go that route, of course, if you want to spend game. But if you want to actually get more games and experience more things, Steam and the NSO, as I told you, are much more valuable routes by more than half of the price of what you saw on the Scaler's website. You can get basically everything that's here on screen whenever it's discounted. And these are great games that you can usually get for 10 euros or less that will lend you the same experience as if you get a Scaler, and probably even a better one considering most of them are now ported to modern hardware. Granted, some of these were ported very long times ago and sometimes they actually need some tweaking through third-party tools, but you can usually check through PC Gamer Wiki for whatever game you are looking to fix. If it's an old game, they will have a fix for it. Most of games have a fix there, or a downloadable tool that you can use to maybe fix a resolution or an FPS cap. But other than that, this is a much more accessible way to play these games that were old and stuck on older consoles but are now on PC. But the point I want to make with this video is that being a retro gamer is easier than ever, and there needs to be a line drawn between what being a collector and a gamer is and actually playing retro games as an hobby is, because they are both very different aspects of the gaming hobby, and you might want to be more enticed to dive into one without all the drawbacks of the other. Now, I myself am talking about this in this perspective, and I am someone that has a sizable collection of physical video games, my biggest collection being the PS2, which is the console I was always most passionate about. I even have old videos that were very successful about this console that you might want to check out on the channel if you are curious about that. But other than that, I just want to make this video to not only talk a little bit more about retro games, but experiment with this new face cam type of thing that I've got going on here. Now, I'm not very comfortable talking on camera. It might not seem like it, but it's not something that I've done a lot. So I'd love for you to tell me what you think about this format in the comments. And also, not something I frequently ask, but subscribe, because the algorithm makes me want to. Other than that, I'm out.